Remember when cheap skillet dinners took just 15 minutes? After World War II, families survived on ration cards, and making dinner became impossible. Then Grandma discovered the skillet trick fried Braunschweiger and one-pan liverwurst meals that saved families. Somehow, along the way, we forgot her hacks. Let's rediscover 30 vintage skillet dinners Grandma made in a few minutes. It was a savory dinner perfect for busy weeknights or when unexpected guests dropped by. Grandma started by slicing a tube of Braunschweiger liver sausage into thick rounds, about half an inch each. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat, then added one large sliced onion and cooked it until soft and golden. She pushed the onions to the side, placed the Braunschweiger slices in the hot skillet, and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until browned and heated through. Made in 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. The rich, savory liver sausage paired perfectly with the sweet caramelized onions. Families ate it hot, serving the slices on buttered rye bread, or alongside boiled potatoes and sauerkraut. Some grandmas added a splash of vinegar to the onions for tang, or topped the sausage with a dollop of mustard. The meal required only one skillet and disappeared from tables by the 1980s when liver became unpopular. But back then, it was the go-to solution when dinner had to be fast, filling, and ready in minutes. It was a hearty dinner made under 15 minutes. And it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by slicing a roll of liverwurst into thick rounds and fried them in a hot skillet with a little butter for 2 minutes per side until the edges crisped. She cracked 6 eggs directly into the same skillet around the liverwurst, seasoned them with salt and pepper, and fried until the whites set and the yolks remained runny. The rich, creamy liverwurst mixed with runny egg yolk created a satisfying, protein-packed meal. Families ate it hot, serving each person 1 slice of liverwurst and 1 egg on a plate with buttered toast for dipping. Some grandmas added a sprinkle of paprika or a dash of hot sauce. Others served it with sliced pickles or a side of fried potatoes. It was a comforting dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 12 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by slicing a loaf of Scrapple, a Pennsylvania Dutch cornmeal and pork mush, into half-inch slices and fried them in a hot skillet with a little lard for 3 minutes per side until crispy and golden. She removed the Scrapple, added 2 sliced apples to the same skillet, and cooked them in the rendered fat until soft and caramelized. The crispy, savory Scrapple paired beautifully with the sweet, tender apples. Families ate it hot, serving the Scrapple slices topped with warm apples alongside fried eggs or pancakes for breakfast or dinner. Some grandmas added a drizzle of maple syrup or a sprinkle of cinnamon to the apples. Others served it with buttered toast or biscuits. Before we move on, many of you asked in the comments where to find these recipes. We even received tons of email, too, so we published these recipes on our website. The link is in the description. Let's continue. It was a simple dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 7 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by opening 2 cans of deviled ham and spread the spicy, finely ground meat onto 6 slices of white bread. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat, then placed the bread slices deviled ham side up in the skillet and fried them for 3 minutes until the bottom turned golden and crispy. She flipped each slice carefully and fried for another 2 minutes until the ham heated through and the bread toasted on both sides. The spicy, savory deviled ham melted into the crispy buttered toast. Families ate it hot, cutting each slice into triangles and serving with pickles or coleslaw. Some grandmas topped the toast with a slice of melted cheese. It was a filling dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 12 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by opening 3 small cans of potted meat and mixed the finely ground meat with 1 beaten egg, half a cup of breadcrumbs, and a pinch of black pepper to bind it together. She shaped the mixture into 6 small patties, each about the size of a burger. She heated 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat and fried the patties for 3 minutes on each side until golden brown and crispy on the outside. The potted meat patties were savory, salty, and filling. Families ate them hot, serving each patty on a toasted bun with mustard and pickles, or alongside fried potatoes and green beans. Some grandmas added diced onion. These 5 skillets, Braunschweiger with onions, liverwurst and eggs, scrapple with apples, deviled ham toast, potted meat patties, took between 7 and 12 minutes using pantry staples and 1 skillet. Yet today all have vanished from modern tables, replaced by microwave dinners and takeout. It was a classic dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 9 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by slicing a roll of Taylor ham, also called pork roll, into 1/4-inch rounds and cut small notches around the edges to prevent curling. She heated a cast-iron skillet over medium heat and fried the slices for 2 minutes per side until the edges caramelized and the centers turned golden. She cracked 6 eggs into the same skillet around the pork roll, seasoned them with salt and pepper, and fried until the whites set and the yolks remained runny. The salty and slightly sweet pork roll paired perfectly with the rich, runny eggs. Families ate it hot, serving each portion on a toasted English muffin or alongside home fries. Some grandmas added a slice of American cheese. It was a rustic dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by slicing a loaf of head cheese, a jellied pork terrine made from the head, into thick slices and fried them in a hot skillet with a tablespoon of butter for 3 minutes per side until the edges crisped and the jelly melted. The slices turned golden and savory with a slightly gelatinous texture that melted in the mouth. Families ate it hot, serving each slice on rye bread slathered with spicy brown mustard or alongside fried potatoes and pickled beets. Some grandmas topped the head cheese with a fried egg or a slice of Swiss cheese. Others served it cold on crackers. The meal required only 1 skillet and disappeared when head cheese became less common. It was a flavorful dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by draining 2 cans of mackerel and flaked the fish gently with a fork, mixing it with 1 beaten egg, half a cup of breadcrumbs, a pinch of black pepper, and a squeeze of lemon juice. She shaped the mixture into 6 small patties and heated 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat. She fried the patties for 3 minutes on each side until golden brown and crispy. The mackerel patties were flaky, savory, and slightly fishy in the best way. Families ate them hot, serving each patty on a toasted bun with tartar sauce or alongside coleslaw and boiled potatoes. Some grandmas added diced onion or parsley to the mixture. It was a quick dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 5 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by opening 2 cans of sardines packed in oil, drained them slightly, and placed them in a hot cast-iron skillet. She fried them for 1 minute per side, just enough to warm them through and crisp the skin. The sardines remained tender and oily, with a rich, briny flavor. Families ate them hot, serving the sardines on top of saltine crackers or toasted bread, drizzled with a little lemon juice and hot sauce. Some grandmas mashed the sardines with a fork and spread them on toast. Others served them whole with sliced onions and pickled. The meal required only one skillet and a can opener, and it disappeared when fresh fish became more affordable and accessible. It was a satisfying dinner made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 12 minutes to get ready. Grandma started by opening a jar of pickled herring, drained the fish, and sliced 2 large boiled potatoes into rounds. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat, then added the potato slices and fried them for 3 minutes per side until golden and crispy. She placed the herring fillets on top of the potatoes and warmed them for 2 minutes. The salty, tangy herring paired perfectly with the crispy, buttery potatoes. Families ate it hot, serving each portion with a side of sour cream. On diced onions and rye bread, some grandmas added a sprinkle of fresh dill or a squeeze of lemon juice. Others served it with pickled beets or cucumber salad. These 10 skillets, egg and cheese sandwich, leftover meatloaf, turkey and gravy, pork and applesauce, beef tips, sausage and peppers, fried chicken, Bologna and eggs, hot dogs and onions, corned beef hash, took 5 to 10 minutes using simple ingredients in one pan. Yet today, all have vanished, replaced by drive-thrus and microwaves. It was a simple dinner. Grandma started by slicing a chunk of salt pork into thin strips, each about a 1/4 inch thick, and placed them in a cold cast-iron skillet. She turned the heat to medium and let the pork slowly render its fat, unstirring occasionally until the strips turned golden brown and crispy, which took about 5 minutes. She removed the crispy pork to a plate, leaving all the rendered fat in the skillet. She added a big handful of fresh collard greens or mustard greens, whatever was growing in the garden, and stirred them in the hot fat, letting them wilt and soften. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. She returned the crispy pork strips to the skillet and tossed everything together so the greens absorbed the salty, smoky flavor. The salty, smoky pork flavored the tender greens perfectly, creating a savory, satisfying side that could easily become a main dish. Families ate it hot, serving the greens and pork alongside warm cornbread to soak up the flavorful drippings, or with a side of boiled potatoes or black-eyed peas. Some grandmas added a generous splash of apple cider vinegar to the greens for tang and brightness, or sprinkled in a pinch of red pepper flakes for heat. Others cracked a fried egg on top of each serving for extra protein. The dish required only one skillet, a knife, and a few minutes of attention, yet it delivered bold, comforting flavors that satisfied every hungry belly at the table. It was a hearty dinner. Grandma started by opening a can of roast beef, carefully draining the thick, gelatinous gravy into a small bowl and setting it aside. She sliced the canned beef into thick rounds, about 1/2 inch each, making sure each slice held together. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until it sizzled and foamed, then placed the beef slices in the hot skillet. She fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges crisped and browned, creating a slight crust on the meat. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. She poured the reserved gravy back into the skillet around the beef, let it bubble and thicken for a minute, then spooned the hot gravy over each slice. The tender, savory beef soaked up the rich, salty gravy, creating a comforting, homey flavor. Families ate it hot, serving the beef and gravy generously over a mound of creamy mashed potatoes, fluffy white rice, or thick slices of toasted white bread. Some grandmas added sliced onions or mushrooms to the skillet along with the gravy for extra vegetables and depth. Others stirred in a splash of Worcestershire sauce or a pinch of black pepper for a bolder flavor. A few served it alongside steamed green beans, buttered peas, or a simple iceberg lettuce salad. The meal required only one skillet, one can opener, and a few minutes of heat. Yet it delivered a hot, satisfying supper that felt like Sunday dinner on a weeknight. It was a satisfying dinner. Grandma started by laying out 6 thin-cut minute steaks on a clean plate and seasoning both sides generously with salt, freshly cracked black pepper, and a light dusting of garlic powder. She heated 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over high heat until the oil shimmered and a drop of water sizzled instantly. She carefully placed the steaks in the hot skillet, working in batches if necessary to avoid crowding, and fried them for exactly 1 minute on each side until they browned beautifully and cooked through. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 6 minutes to get ready. The steaks remained tender, juicy, and flavorful despite the lightning-fast cooking time. Families ate them hot, serving each steak on a warm plate with a pat of cold butter melting slowly on top, alongside a generous scoop of creamy mashed potatoes and a pile of buttered green beans or boiled carrots. Some grandmas made a quick pan gravy by sprinkling a tablespoon of flour into the hot drippings, whisking it smooth, then slowly adding a cup of milk and stirring until it thickened into a rich, creamy sauce. Others topped the steaks with a pile of fried onions or sautéed mushrooms for extra flavor and texture. A few served the steaks on toasted white bread, letting the juices soak into the bread like an open-faced sandwich. The meal required only 1 skillet, a pair of tongs, and a few minutes of intense heat, yet it delivered a restaurant-quality steak dinner at home for pennies. It was a filling dinner. Grandma started by cutting cube steaks into thick strips, about 2 inches wide and 4 inches long, so they looked like homemade chicken fingers. She seasoned the strips generously with salt, black pepper, and a teaspoon of paprika for color and a hint of smokiness. She poured a 1/4 inch of vegetable oil into a cast-iron skillet and heated it over medium-high heat until it shimmered. She spread a cup of all-purpose flour on a plate and dredged each strip lightly in the flour, shaking off any excess so only a thin coating remained. She placed the strips in the hot oil and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until they turned golden brown and crispy. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 9 minutes to get ready. The cube steak fingers were tender inside, with a crunchy, flavorful coating outside. Families ate them hot, serving the strips on a big platter with small bowls of ketchup, yellow mustard, or creamy white gravy for dipping, alongside a pile of crispy fried potatoes or creamy coleslaw. Some grandmas added a pinch of cayenne pepper to the flour for a spicy kick. Others served the fingers on slices of white bread with pickles and onions, turning them into quick steak sandwiches. A few drizzled the strips with hot sauce or honey for a sweet and spicy finish. The meal required only 1 skillet, 1 plate, and a bottle of oil. Yet it delivered a fun, finger-friendly supper that kids and adults both loved to eat. It was a quick dinner. Grandma started by placing a dozen fresh breakfast sausage links in a cold cast-iron skillet, spacing them evenly so they didn't touch. She turned the heat to medium and let the skillet warm slowly, allowing the sausages to release their natural fat as they heated. As the fat began to pool, she turned each sausage link with a pair of tongs, rotating them every 2 minutes to ensure they browned evenly on all sides. She cooked them for about 8 minutes total until the casings turned golden brown and slightly crispy, and the meat inside cooked through completely. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. The sausages were juicy, savory, slightly sweet, and bursting with flavor. Families ate them hot, serving the links with a side of fried eggs, fluffy pancakes, and buttered toast for a breakfast-for-dinner meal, or alongside creamy mashed potatoes and tangy sauerkraut for a heartier supper. Some grandmas pricked each sausage with a fork before cooking to prevent the casings from bursting and to let excess fat escape. Others sliced the cooked sausages and tossed them with scrambled eggs or fried potatoes. A few served them on toasted hot dog buns with mustard and onions, turning them into quick sausage sandwiches. The meal required only one skillet, a pair of tongs, and a few minutes of occasional turning, yet it delivered a protein-packed, flavorful supper that satisfied everyone at the table without any fuss or complicated steps. These 5 skillets: salt pork with greens, canned roast beef slices, minute steaks, cube steak fingers, breakfast sausage links, took between 6 and 10 minutes using simple ingredients in one pan. Yet today, all have vanished from modern tables, replaced by drive-thrus and frozen dinners. It was a tender dinner. Grandma started by patting 6 thin-cut pork chops dry with a clean towel to remove any excess moisture, which helped them brown better. She seasoned both sides of each chop generously with salt, black pepper, and a light sprinkle of garlic powder. She heated 2 tablespoons of lard or vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until the fat shimmered and a test corner of meat sizzled immediately. She placed the chops in the hot skillet, being careful not to overcrowd, and fried them for 3 minutes on the first side until a golden brown crust formed. She flipped each chop with tongs and fried for another 3 minutes on the second side until cooked through and slightly caramelized. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The thin pork chops remained tender and juicy, with crispy edges that delivered great texture. Families ate them hot, serving each chop on a warm plate with a generous helping of creamy mashed potatoes, a ladle of pan gravy made from the drippings, and a side of buttered green beans or applesauce. Some grandmas added a splash of apple cider vinegar to the skillet after removing the chops, scraping up the browned bits to make a quick, tangy pan sauce. Others topped the chops with fried onions or sautéed mushrooms. A few served them on toasted white bread with mustard and pickles. The meal required only one skillet, a pair of tongs, and a few minutes of heat. Yet it delivered a satisfying pork dinner that tasted like it took much longer. It was a sweet dinner. Grandma started by laying 8 thick slices of bacon in a cold cast-iron skillet, then turned the heat to medium-low. She let the bacon cook slowly, turning occasionally until it became crispy and golden, which took about 8 minutes. She transferred the crispy bacon to a paper towel-lined plate to drain, leaving about 2 tablespoons of the flavorful bacon fat in the skillet. She sliced 2 large apples into thin wedges, leaving the skins on for color and texture. She added the apple slices to the hot bacon fat and cooked them for about 4 minutes, turning occasionally until they softened and caramelized slightly. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 12 minutes to get ready. The sweet, tender apples paired beautifully with the salty, smoky bacon, creating a perfect balance of flavors. Families ate it hot, serving the bacon and apples together on a warm plate, often alongside scrambled eggs, pancakes, or biscuits for breakfast for dinner, or with mashed sweet potatoes and greens for a heartier supper. Some grandmas sprinkled a pinch of cinnamon or brown sugar over the apples while they cooked for extra sweetness. Others added a drizzle of maple syrup at the end. A few served the apples on top of buttered toast or mixed them into oatmeal. The meal required only one skillet, a sharp knife, and a few minutes of attention, yet it delivered a comforting, sweet and savory combination that everyone loved. It was a flavorful dinner. Grandma started by slicing leftover baked ham into thick steaks, about 1/2 inch each, making sure to cut through any fatty edges. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat until it melted and began to foam. She placed the ham slices in the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges crisped and the surface turned golden. She sprinkled 2 tablespoons of brown sugar evenly over the ham slices and let it melt and caramelize for about a minute, creating a sweet, sticky glaze made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The ham was salty, savory, and slightly sweet, with crispy, caramelized edges. Families ate it hot, serving each ham slice with a generous scoop of creamy mashed potatoes, buttered green beans, and a warm biscuit or slice of cornbread. Some grandmas added a splash of apple cider or pineapple juice to the skillet along with the brown sugar, creating a sweet, fruity pan sauce. Others topped the ham with a fried egg or a spoonful of mustard for tang. A few served it on toasted bread with pickles and lettuce, turning it into a quick ham sandwich. The meal required only 1 skillet, a spatula, and a few minutes of heat, yet it delivered a sweet, savory supper that transformed humble leftovers into a delicious, satisfying meal that tasted freshly made. It was a creamy dinner. Grandma started by opening a can of chicken a la king, which contained chunks of chicken in a thick, creamy sauce with diced vegetables. She poured the entire contents into a cast-iron skillet and heated it over medium heat, stirring occasionally to prevent sticking. As the mixture warmed, the sauce began to bubble gently, and the aroma of chicken and cream filled the kitchen. She let it simmer for about 5 minutes until heated through completely. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 6 minutes to get ready. The chicken a la king was rich, creamy, and loaded with tender chicken, peas, and pimentos. Families ate it hot, serving generous spoonfuls over toasted white bread, warm biscuits, fluffy rice, or buttered egg noodles. Some grandmas stirred in a splash of milk or cream to make the sauce even richer and smoother. Others added a handful of frozen peas or diced bell peppers for extra vegetables and color. A few topped each, serving with a sprinkle of black pepper or a dash of paprika for a hint of spice. Some served it in bread bowls or puff pastry shells for a fancier presentation. The meal required only 1 skillet, a can opener, and a wooden spoon, yet it delivered a restaurant-quality creamed chicken dish that tasted homemade and comforting. It was the perfect solution for busy nights when time was short, but everyone still needed a hot, satisfying supper on the table. It was a satisfying dinner. Grandma started by slicing leftover pot roast into thick slices, about 1/2 inch each, making sure to include any tender, juicy pieces that had fallen apart during the original cooking. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until it melted and sizzled. She placed the pot roast slices in the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges crisped and the surface turned golden brown. If there was any leftover gravy, she poured it into the skillet and let it bubble and thicken around the meat. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The pot roast was tender, flavorful, and slightly crispy on the edges with a rich, savory taste. Families ate it hot, serving each slice with a generous helping of mashed potatoes, roasted carrots, or buttered egg noodles, and a ladle of hot gravy poured over everything. Some grandmas added a splash of beef broth or red wine to the skillet to make extra gravy. Others topped the slices with fried onions or sautéed mushrooms for added flavor. A few served the meat on toasted bread with horseradish or mustard, turning it into a quick roast beef sandwich. The meal required only 1 skillet, a spatula, and a few minutes of heat, yet it delivered a comforting, home-cooked supper that made leftovers taste even better than the original meal. These 5 skillets, thin pork chops, bacon with fried apples, leftover ham with brown sugar, canned chicken a la king, leftover pot roast slices, took between 6 and 12 minutes using simple ingredients and 1 pan, yet today all have vanished, replaced by takeout and microwaves. It was a comforting dinner. Grandma started by buttering 2 slices of thick white bread on one side each, spreading the butter all the way to the edges so they would toast evenly and turn golden brown. She placed 1 slice butter side down in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat and immediately topped it with a thick slice of American cheese, which began to soften and melt as the bread warmed. She cracked an egg into a small bowl, then carefully slid it into the same skillet right next to the bread. She used a spatula to break the yolk gently, letting it spread across the white, then used the edge of the spatula to fold the egg into a neat square that would fit perfectly on the bread. She seasoned the egg with a pinch of salt and freshly cracked black pepper, made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 5 minutes to get ready. Once the egg cooked through and the cheese began to melt into a gooey layer, she placed the cooked egg on top of the cheese, added the second slice of bread butter, side up, and pressed down gently with the spatula to compress the sandwich. She flipped the entire sandwich carefully and toasted the second side for another minute until both sides turned golden brown and crispy and the cheese melted completely, oozing slightly at the edges. The sandwich was warm, gooey, savory, and deeply satisfying, with the runny yolk mixing into the melted cheese and soaking into the toasted bread. Families ate it hot, cutting the sandwich diagonally into 2 triangles and serving it with a handful of salty potato chips, a crisp pickle spear, or a small bowl of hot tomato soup for dipping. Some grandmas added a slice of crispy cooked bacon or thin-sliced ham to the sandwich for extra protein and smoky flavor. Others spread a thin layer of yellow mustard or creamy mayonnaise on the bread before adding the egg and cheese for tang and richness. A few cooked the egg without breaking the yolk, leaving it perfectly runny so it oozed out when bitten into, creating a luscious, messy experience. Some used sharp cheddar or Swiss cheese instead of American for a sharper, more complex flavor. Others added a slice of ripe tomato or a few crisp leaves of iceberg lettuce for freshness and crunch. The sandwich required only 1 skillet, a spatula, and a few minutes of steady heat, yet it delivered a hot, filling meal that tasted like comfort and home. It was the perfect solution for nights when the pantry was nearly empty, but everyone still needed something warm, cheesy, and satisfying on their plate to fill their bellies and lift their spirits. It was a hearty dinner. Grandma started by slicing leftover meatloaf into thick slices about 3/4 of an inch each, making sure each slice held together and included some of the flavorful caramelized crust from the outside of the loaf. She heated 2 tablespoons of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until it melted, foamed, and began to turn slightly golden and smell nutty. She placed the meatloaf slices carefully in the hot skillet, making sure not to crowd them so each slice could crisp properly and develop a beautiful crust. She fried them for 3 minutes on the first side without moving them, allowing a deep golden brown crust to form on the bottom. She flipped each slice with a wide spatula and fried for another 3 minutes on the second side until both sides were crispy, caramelized, and heated through completely. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The meatloaf slices were crispy and caramelized on the outside, tender and juicy on the inside, with all the savory flavors of the original loaf concentrated and intensified by the frying process. Families ate them hot, serving each slice on a warm plate with a generous helping of creamy mashed potatoes, a ladle of rich brown gravy poured over the top, and a side of buttered green beans, sweet corn, or tender peas. Some grandmas spread a thin layer of ketchup or tangy barbecue sauce on each slice before frying, creating a sweet and tangy glaze that caramelized in the heat and added another layer of flavor. Others topped the fried slices with a perfectly fried egg, turning the leftovers into a breakfast for dinner meal that felt indulgent and special. A few crumbled the meatloaf into small pieces and scrambled it with eggs and diced onions, creating a hearty, protein-packed hash that stretched the leftovers even further. Some served the slices on toasted hamburger buns with crisp lettuce, juicy tomato slices, crunchy pickles, and a smear of yellow mustard, turning them into delicious meatloaf sandwiches. Others cut the slices into thick strips and served them with small bowls of dipping sauces like creamy ranch, honey mustard, or smoky barbecue sauce. The meal required only one skillet, a wide spatula, and a few minutes of steady heat. Yet it delivered a completely new meal from yesterday's leftovers. The crispy edges and warm center made the meatloaf taste even better than it did the first time, proving that Grandma knew how to stretch every meal and waste absolutely nothing. It was a savory dinner. Grandma started by slicing leftover roasted turkey into thick pieces, keeping the meat as intact as possible to preserve its natural tenderness and moisture. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat until it melted and began to sizzle gently. She placed the turkey slices in the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side, just long enough to warm them through and crisp the edges slightly without drying out the delicate meat. If there was leftover gravy stored in the refrigerator in a jar or bowl, she spooned it generously into the skillet around the turkey, letting it warm and bubble gently, thickening slightly as it heated and the butter mixed in. If there was no leftover gravy available, she made a quick version by whisking a tablespoon of all-purpose flour into the hot drippings in the skillet, then slowly adding a cup of chicken broth and stirring constantly until the mixture became smooth, thick, and velvety. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. The turkey was tender, juicy, and infused with the rich, savory flavor of the hot gravy. Families ate it hot, serving each slice of turkey on a warm plate with a generous ladle of gravy poured over the top, alongside a big scoop of creamy mashed potatoes. A spoonful of tangy cranberry sauce, and a side of buttered green beans or roasted carrots. Some grandmas added a splash of white wine or extra chicken stock to the gravy for extra depth and a slightly brighter flavor. Others stirred in a spoonful of sour cream or heavy cream to make the gravy richer, silkier, and more luxurious. A few added sliced mushrooms or diced onions to the skillet, along with the gravy for extra vegetables, texture, and earthy flavor. Some served the turkey and gravy over toasted white bread, turning it into an open-faced hot turkey sandwich that soaked up every drop of the delicious gravy. Others shredded the turkey into bite-sized pieces and mixed it thoroughly with the gravy, serving it over fluffy biscuits, steamed rice, or buttered egg noodles. The meal required only one skillet, a wooden spoon, and a few minutes of gentle heat, yet it delivered a comforting, Thanksgiving-like supper any night of the week. It was proof that leftovers didn't have to be boring or repetitive. They could be transformed into something warm, delicious, and deeply satisfying with just a little butter, heat, and Grandma's loving touch. It was a tender dinner. Grandma started by slicing leftover roasted pork, whether it was a pork loin, pork chops, or a pork roast, into thick slices about 1/2 inch each, making sure to include any pieces with a bit of fat for extra flavor and moisture. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat until it melted and began to foam lightly. She placed the pork slices in the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges turned golden and slightly crispy and the meat warmed through completely. While the pork fried, she spooned a generous amount of applesauce into the skillet around the meat, letting it warm and bubble gently, its sweet, fruity aroma filling the kitchen and mixing with the savory scent of the pork. made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The pork was tender, juicy, and slightly caramelized on the edges, and the warm applesauce provided a sweet, tangy contrast that complemented the savory meat perfectly. Families ate it hot, serving each slice of pork on a warm plate with a generous spoonful of warm applesauce ladled on top or served on the side, alongside creamy mashed potatoes, buttered egg noodles, or roasted sweet potatoes. Some grandmas added a pinch of ground cinnamon or a drizzle of pure maple syrup to the applesauce while it warmed, enhancing its natural sweetness and adding a hint of warm spice. Others stirred in a handful of raisins or dried cranberries for extra texture, chewiness, and fruity flavor. A few added a splash of apple cider or white wine to the skillet to deglaze the pan and create a light, fruity sauce that tied the whole dish together. Some topped the pork with a perfectly fried egg or a sprinkle of fresh herbs like sage or thyme for an herbal, savory note. Others served it on toasted bread with mustard and pickles, turning it into a quick pork sandwich. The meal required only one skillet, a spatula, and a jar of applesauce, yet it delivered a sweet, savory supper that tasted like a Sunday dinner made from scratch. It was another example of Grandma's genius for taking yesterday's leftovers and turning them into today's comfort food, proving that nothing ever went to waste in her kitchen and that every meal could be delicious, no matter how simple the ingredients. The combination of tender pork and sweet applesauce was a classic pairing that never failed to satisfy. It was a rich dinner. Grandma started by gathering leftover beef tips, tender chunks of beef that had been braised or stewed with onions, mushrooms, and a savory gravy, and gently reheating them in a cast-iron skillet. She added a tablespoon of butter to the skillet and heated it over medium heat until it melted and began to sizzle. She added the beef tips along with any leftover gravy or sauce, stirring gently to coat every piece. If the gravy had thickened too much in the refrigerator and become gelatinous, she added a splash of beef broth or water to loosen it, bringing it back to a smooth, pourable consistency. She let everything simmer gently for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally until the beef was heated through and the gravy bubbled and thickened slightly. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 7 minutes to get ready. The beef tips were tender, flavorful, and coated in a rich, savory gravy that clung to every bite. Families ate them hot, serving generous spoonfuls over a bed of fluffy white rice, creamy mashed potatoes, buttered egg noodles, or toasted bread. Some grandmas added sliced mushrooms or diced onions to the skillet to bulk up the dish and add extra vegetables. Others stirred in a spoonful of sour cream or heavy cream to make the gravy even richer and more luxurious. A few added a splash of Worcestershire sauce or a pinch of black pepper for deeper flavor. Some topped the beef tips with a sprinkle of fresh parsley or chives for color and freshness. Others served them over biscuits, turning the dish into a hearty beef and gravy biscuit bowl. The meal required only one skillet, a wooden spoon, and a few minutes of gentle heat, yet it delivered a restaurant-quality beef dinner that tasted like it had been simmering for hours. It was proof that Grandma could take yesterday's leftovers and make them taste even better the second time around, using nothing more than a little butter, heat, and her years of kitchen wisdom. Every bite was warm, comforting, and deeply satisfying, reminding everyone at the table that good food didn't have to be complicated or expensive. It just had to be made with care and served with love. The rich gravy, tender beef, and simple sides combined to create a meal that felt special and indulgent, even though it was made entirely from leftovers and took less than 10 minutes to prepare from start to finish. These 5 skillets, egg and cheese sandwich, leftover meatloaf slices, leftover turkey and gravy, leftover pork and applesauce, leftover beef tips, took between 5 and 10 minutes using simple leftovers and one pan. Yet today, all have vanished, replaced by takeout and food waste. It was a flavorful dinner, and Grandma started by slicing leftover cooked sausages, whether they were Italian sausages, bratwurst, or kielbasa, into thick rounds, about half an inch each. She heated a tablespoon of olive oil or butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until it shimmered and was hot enough to sizzle when the meat hit the pan. She added the sausage slices to the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges turned golden brown and slightly crispy, and the meat warmed through completely. She pushed the sausages to the side of the skillet and added sliced bell peppers, red, green, or yellow, and a sliced onion to the empty space, stirring the vegetables in the hot fat and letting them soften and caramelize for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 9 minutes to get ready. The sausages were savory, smoky, and slightly crispy on the edges, while the peppers and onions were sweet, tender, and beautifully caramelized. Families ate it hot, serving generous portions on a warm plate, often tucked into toasted hoagie rolls or sub-buns with a drizzle of spicy mustard or tangy marinara sauce, or served over a bed of fluffy white rice or buttered pasta. Some grandmas added a splash of balsamic vinegar or red wine to the skillet to deglaze the pan and create a tangy, flavorful sauce that coated the sausage and vegetables. Others stirred in a pinch of Italian seasoning, garlic powder, or crushed red pepper flakes for extra spice, aroma, and a hint of heat. A few added sliced mushrooms or diced tomatoes to the mix for additional vegetables, moisture, and a richer sauce. Some topped the dish with shredded mozzarella or grated Parmesan cheese, letting it melt into the hot sausage and peppers and creating a cheesy, gooey topping. Others served it over creamy polenta or mashed potatoes for a heartier, more filling meal. The meal required only one skillet, a sharp knife, and a few minutes of steady heat, yet it delivered a bold, colorful supper that tasted like it came straight from an Italian deli or street fair. It was another example of Grandma's ability to turn yesterday's leftovers into today's feast, proving that nothing in her kitchen ever went to waste, and that every meal could be delicious, satisfying, and made with love and just a little bit of heat and attention. It was a crispy dinner, and Grandma started by taking leftover fried chicken pieces, whether they were drumsticks, thighs, wings, or breast pieces, out of the refrigerator and letting them sit at room temperature for a few minutes so they would heat more evenly and the coating would crisp better. She heated a tablespoon of butter or vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat until it melted and began to sizzle gently. She placed the cold fried chicken pieces in the hot skillet, skin side down first, and let them heat slowly, turning occasionally with tongs to ensure even heating on all sides. She covered the skillet with a lid for the first few minutes to trap the heat and warm the chicken all the way through to the bone, then removed the lid and continued frying for another few minutes to crisp the skin back up and restore the crunchy texture. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. The fried chicken was hot, crispy on the outside and juicy on the inside, with all the flavor and texture of freshly fried chicken, but without the mess, time, or effort of frying from scratch. Families ate it hot, serving each piece on a warm plate alongside creamy mashed potatoes, tangy coleslaw, buttery biscuits, or warm cornbread, with a drizzle of honey or a few dashes of hot sauce for extra flavor and sweetness or heat. Some grandmas brushed the chicken with a little melted butter or honey while it reheated to add extra richness, shine, and a hint of sweetness that caramelized beautifully. Others sprinkled it with a pinch of garlic powder, smoked paprika, or cayenne pepper for a boost of flavor and a touch of heat. A few chopped the reheated chicken into bite-sized pieces and tossed it with hot sauce and melted butter, turning it into quick buffalo chicken bites that could be served with celery sticks and ranch dressing. Some served the chicken on top of a fresh green salad with tomatoes, cucumbers, and ranch dressing, or tucked it into a sandwich with crisp lettuce, juicy tomato, and creamy mayonnaise. The meal required only one skillet, a pair of tongs, and a few minutes of gentle, patient heat, yet it delivered a fried chicken dinner that tasted as good as, or even better than, the original, proving that Grandma knew the secret to reviving leftovers: low and slow heat to warm them through, then higher heat to crisp them back up perfectly. It was a simple dinner. Grandma started by slicing thick bologna into rounds, about a quarter-inch each, and cutting small notches around the edges of each slice to prevent them from curling up in the skillet as they cooked. She heated a tablespoon of butter in a cast-iron skillet over medium heat until it melted and began to foam and smell nutty. She placed the bologna slices in the hot skillet and fried them for 2 minutes on each side until the edges turned golden brown and slightly crispy, and the centers puffed up slightly from the heat. She pushed the bologna to the side of the skillet and cracked 4 to 6 eggs directly into the hot butter, seasoning them generously with salt and freshly cracked black pepper. She fried the eggs until the whites set completely, and the yolks remained runny and golden, or longer if the family preferred them well done, made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 8 minutes to get ready. The bologna was salty, savory, and slightly crispy on the edges, and the rich, runny egg yolks mixed perfectly with the fried meat when cut into. Families ate it hot, serving each person 1 or 2 slices of bologna and 1 or 2 fried eggs on a warm plate alongside buttered toast, crispy home fries, or creamy grits. Some grandmas spread yellow mustard or creamy mayonnaise on the toast before topping it with the bologna and egg, creating a quick, satisfying breakfast sandwich that could be eaten with hands. Others added a slice of American cheese on top of the bologna while it was still hot in the skillet, letting it melt into a gooey, cheesy layer. A few served the bologna and eggs over a bed of fluffy white rice or mixed them with scrambled eggs and diced onions for a hearty hash. Some topped the eggs with hot sauce, ketchup, or Worcestershire sauce for extra flavor, tang, or heat. The meal required only one skillet, a spatula, and a few minutes of steady heat, yet it delivered a filling, protein-packed supper that tasted like comfort food from childhood. It was the kind of simple, no-fuss meal that Grandma could make in her sleep, and it never failed to satisfy hungry bellies and lift spirits. Every bite was warm, savory, salty, and deeply nostalgic, reminding everyone that the best meals didn't have to be fancy or complicated. They just had to be made with love, served hot, and shared around the table with the people you loved most in the world. It was a quick dinner. Grandma started by slicing 6 hot dogs lengthwise, cutting them almost all the way through, but leaving them attached at one end so they opened like a book and laid flat. She heated a tablespoon of butter or vegetable oil in a cast-iron skillet over medium-high heat until it melted and began to sizzle and smell delicious. She placed the hot dogs cut side down in the hot skillet and let them fry for 3 minutes without moving them, allowing the cut sides to caramelize and develop a deep golden brown crust that added texture and flavor. She flipped them over carefully with tongs and fried for another 2 minutes until the skin blistered, crisped, and charred slightly in spots. She removed the hot dogs to a plate and added 1 large sliced onion to the same skillet, stirring it in the hot fat and letting it soften, caramelize, and turn golden brown for about 5 minutes. Some served the hot dogs and onions over a bed of fluffy white rice or mixed them with scrambled eggs for a hearty hash. The meal required only 1 skillet, a sharp knife, and a few minutes of steady heat, yet it delivered a street cart-style hot dog dinner that everyone loved. It was proof that Grandma could turn the simplest ingredients, hot dogs, onions, butter, into a meal that tasted special and satisfying without any fuss or complicated steps. The combination of crispy hot dogs and sweet caramelized onions was a classic pairing that never went out of style and always brought smiles to the table. It was a satisfying dinner. Grandma started by opening a can of corned beef hash and spooning the entire contents into a cast-iron skillet, scraping every last bit from the can. She heated the skillet over medium-high heat and used a sturdy metal spatula to spread the hash into an even layer across the entire bottom of the skillet, pressing it down firmly so it made full contact with the hot surface and would form a crispy crust. She let it cook undisturbed for about 5 minutes, resisting the urge to stir, allowing the bottom to form a deep golden brown, crispy crust that added texture and flavor. She used the spatula to flip sections of the hash, breaking it into large chunks and letting the other side crisp up for another 5 minutes, creating multiple crispy edges throughout. Made under 15 minutes, and it took hardly 10 minutes to get ready. The corned beef hash was crispy and golden on the outside, tender and savory on the inside, with a rich, salty, meaty flavor that satisfied every craving. Families ate it hot, serving generous scoops on warm plates, often topped with a fried egg so the runny yolk mixed into the hash and created a rich, creamy sauce, or alongside buttered toast and a glass of cold orange juice. Some grandmas added diced onions, bell peppers, or jalapenos to the hash while it cooked for extra flavor, crunch, and a hint of heat. Others stirred in leftover mashed potatoes or diced boiled potatoes to bulk it up and make it stretch further. A few topped the hash with shredded cheddar or American cheese and let it melt into the hot meat, creating a gooey, cheesy topping. Some served it in a bowl with ketchup, hot sauce, or Worcestershire sauce drizzled generously on top. Others tucked it into a warm tortilla with scrambled eggs and salsa, turning it into a quick breakfast burrito that could be eaten on the go. The meal required only one skillet, a can opener, and a sturdy spatula, yet it delivered a hearty, filling supper that tasted like classic diner food. It was the ultimate pantry meal, cheap, fast, endlessly satisfying, and requiring almost no skill or effort. And it proved that Grandma could make magic out of a single can and a hot skillet. Turning humble ingredients into a meal that everyone looked forward to eating was Grandma's true gift. She transformed simple pantry staples, canned goods, leftover scraps, cheap cuts of meat, into dishes that brought the whole family to the table with smiles, proving that love and creativity mattered more than expensive ingredients. These 30 skillet dinners fed America when time was tight and pantries were simple. Grandma didn't need fancy appliances, long ingredient lists, or hours in the kitchen. She had one cast-iron skillet, a little butter, and the know-how to put a hot meal on the table in 15 minutes or less. She fried Bologna and eggs when the week got hectic. She crisped up leftover meatloaf until it tasted brand new. She turned a can of corned beef hash into a breakfast that brought everyone to the table with smiles. These weren't just meals. They were clever solutions, quick comforts, and love served on a warm plate. By the 1980s, something shifted. Microwave dinners replaced the skillet. Drive-thrus replaced home cooking. Convenience became king, and we slowly forgot Grandma's 15-minute tricks. We lost the sizzle of butter hitting a hot pan, the smell of onions caramelizing in seconds, the satisfaction of flipping a perfectly fried egg,